Good morning, everybody. Go ahead and get started here. If you got your questions, go ahead and post them. Should be below the video if you're on a smaller screen, or to the right of the video if you are on a larger screen, like a computer, something like that. So we don't have any questions in there at the moment. So now is a good time to ask. You'll be able to get your questions answered right away. Um, yeah, so just waiting for some questions to be asked. So if you got them, be a good time to ask. All right, so Don P says, I have trouble getting ball first contact with my irons and hybrids. What can I do? So the first thing I would do is I would check your ball position, right? So ball position, I would go for a ball position that's going to be middle of stance. So if I put this alignment stick down, I'm going to put this alignment stick down right in the middle of my stance here. So if that's going right through the middle there, I would go for a ball position where the back of the ball would be kind of on that stick, right? So that'd be pretty close to the middle, just forward of the middle. That's typically going to be a good ball position for most people. A lot of people that I see that struggle with chunk shots, like you're talking about, a lot of times they'll have that ball position up here, right? And it may be because they're trying to help the ball up in the air. But the problem with that is that it's going to tend to make it difficult to make ball first contact, because in order to make ball first contact, we have to have a descending blow into the ball, which means that the bottom of the swing needs to be on this side of the ball. So if you imagine the club, if I use my hula hoop here, imagine the club comes down in an arc like this. The bottom of that arc needs to be on the target side of the ball. If it's on this side of the ball, the opposite side of the ball, then you're going to be hitting up on it and the ground is in the way. So we have to have a descending blow on the ball. So for any shot that you're hitting off the turf, I would go for a ball position that's going to allow you to get the bottom of your swing more in front. For most people, that's going to be just forward to the middle of stance. So that's the first place I would look. Now let's say that your ball position is good, but you're still hitting those chunk shots. Well, what I would look at next is what you're doing in your backswing, right? So a lot of times when I see people struggle with chunk shots is they kind of sway and slide off of the ball too much. And that will make it very, very difficult to get to the lead side, right? And to get the bottom of your swing to be more in front for a couple of reasons, right? So if I'm like this, one, I have a long way to go. I'm trying to get here, right? So if I'm way over here, I have a long way to get to that position. The other thing is that my leg is kind of straight up and down, right? So if my leg is straight up and down, I don't have a lot of leverage to push in that direction. So ideally, what I'd want to do is I want to have my hips kind of remain a little bit centered. Now, we're going to be shifting pressures, but we want our hips to remain pretty close to center. So what that means is I don't want to sway my hips too much. I'm going to move my hips a little bit to my trail side to put pressure in my trail foot. And as soon as I put pressure in my trail foot, I'm going to be pushing my hip back and around. And you can see how that's going to help me to create an angle here with my leg to be able to push into my lead side. And also I don't have as far to go. So a good drill to help you with that is a chair drill. You can take a chair, put it outside of your hip like this, right? Have it touching your hip to start. and then start your backswing, kind of nudge the chair. And then as you get to the top, you're going to create a little bit of a space between your hip and the chair, about a hand thickness of space. And then you're going to continue to push into that and push into your lead side, right? Well, now let's say you're already doing that in the backswing, right? Let's say that you're already, you don't have a big hip sway or anything like that. You're in a good position at the top. You're still making those chunks. The next thing I would look at is how you're moving into the ball, into the downswing, right? So sometimes I'll see people, they'll be in this position at the top, but then they'll come into impact and they'll kind of hang back, right? So their compression line, which is the line that goes from my lead ankle, lead hip, lead shoulder, right, gets too far angled away. We want to have this compression line be pretty much straight up and down as you're coming into impact for a shot that's with an iron. For a driver, we can be more angled away because we want to hit up on it, right? But for an iron, we need to kind of hit down and through that ball. Or for a hybrid or anything that you're hitting off the ground, we need to hit down and through that ball. So we need that compression line to be more vertical. So I'd be working on getting a good weight shift to the lead side. A good drill for that is a step drill. Start with your feet together, and this will be without a ball. Start with your feet together. Throw that club back. As you're throwing the club back, you're going to step forward. This forces you to get your momentum going forward as you're getting up to the top and to continue to get that momentum moving forward in the downswing. Then try to replicate that same feeling in a practice swing where you're not doing the step. Try to replicate that same feeling of how you're moving pressures in your feet, and then apply that to the ball. So that'd be what you would do. If you're looking and you're too far, you're kind of hanging back in the downswing. The next thing I would look at, let's say you're doing all that. Let's say you are, your ball position is good, your backswing is good, your downswing is good, but you're still chunking it. Well, then the next thing I would look at is, are you shallowing out the club too much? Yes, you can shallow out the club too much. I know we emphasize shallowing out the club, but you can overdo about anything, right? So what you may be doing, and if you imagine this, right, if I'm swinging 45 degrees to the right, so if I'm standing at home plate on a baseball diamond and I'm swinging in the direction of first base, actually down that first base line, imagine where your club's going to bottom out at. My club's going to bottom out more in front of my right foot, right? On the other end of that, if I were to swing down the third base line, my club's going to bottom out in front of my trail foot. So if you're over-shallowing the club, if you're over-shallowing out the club, that can lead to chunks as well. So that would be another thing I would look at is this club working too much from the inside? And I would actually maybe feel like you're swinging down the third. You wouldn't necessarily literally want to do that, right? We want to neutralize things. But if you're swinging too much from the inside, over-shallowing out the club, and you want to get to where you're shallowing out the club the way you want to, you may want to feel like you're coming over the top a little bit. So those would all be the things I'd be looking at if you happen to be chunking the ball. All right, let's keep going. So Mike B says, I'm struggling with a short pitch flop shot from deeper grass, 3 feet off the green to a tight pin, say 4 to 5 yards away. Help. Well, you and everybody else, for the most part, that is a tough shot. If you're in deep grass, you're short-sighted. That in of itself is a tough shot. So, basically, when you're in thick grass or deep grass, you need to swing hard enough to get it through the grass, right? But if you're short-sighted, right, and you swing hard, the ball may come out really hot. So what I'd recommend doing is kind of laying open the face as much as you can. As you mentioned, like a flop shot, kind of laying open the face. And what you want to do is kind of try to feel like you're cutting the legs out from underneath the ball. Right. So it's going to be very similar to like a bunker shot, right? You're just kind of trying to cut the legs out from underneath the ball. Now, this is a shot that you're going to need to practice. But I would put the ball. So let me put this stick out of the way here. So open up the face. I would have the ball kind of middle-ish to maybe even back in the stance. And the reason is that I want to have kind of a steeper angle of attack to get to this ball. Right. What I don't want to do is come in really, really like if I have it really far forward, my club's going to come in more level with the ball. And there's going to be a lot of grass there that's going to eat up, that's going to offer a lot of resistance to the club. So I want to almost feel like I'm chopping down into the ball, right? So to do that, I would have the ball kind of middle to back of the stance. I'm going to have this face wide open. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hinge this club up and try to drop it right underneath the ball and try to pop the ball up out. And I want to give it speed so that way you can get through the grass. Where I see a lot of people struggle with this is they don't use enough speed and the ball just kind of ends up staying there, right? Or it just kind of maybe just gets out barely. So you need to give it speed for the club head to get through it. But with that speed, you need to kind of be almost barely hitting the ball, which makes it a very high degree of difficulty shot. So open face with a wedge, ball middle to back of stance. We're going to be some hinge, and we're going to drop it down in there. We need to have some speed. We're going to pop it out. Go practice that. This, I wish I could tell you, you're just going to go do that. And you're just next time you have this situation on the course, you're going to execute it. Go practice it so that way you have confidence and know what's going on. Because otherwise, it's going to be hard to swing hard. It's going to be difficult to swing with enough speed to be able to execute this shot because you're just not going to trust it, right? And also, you want to practice it so that way you can get the feeling of cutting the legs out underneath the ball. Because if you don't cut the legs out underneath the ball and you catch a lot of the ball, that ball could be gone, right? It could be bye-bye. So go practice this shot before you try to take it on the course. Now, let's say you're going to play this afternoon and you don't have an opportunity to practice this. Then in that situation, you're just going to have to take your medicine. And I would just try to get it onto the green to give yourself a putt. Basically, put yourself in a situation where the absolute worst score you're going to make is going to be bogey, right? Because the last thing you want to do is go try this shot. You don't have confidence with it. You don't have the confidence with it to swing with the speed that you need to have to hit this shot. And then you kind of dribble it out, and then you have the same shot again. And now you got to get up and down for bogey, right? Or you don't want to have the situation where you catch too much of the ball because you don't know the feel of cutting the legs out from underneath the ball. And now you hit it 40 yards over the green. And now you have a really tough up and down. And you have a 40-yard pitch to get up and down for bogey. In that situation, if you don't have the opportunity to practice this, what I'd recommend doing is take your medicine. You just make sure that you get it onto the green. And this could be a situation where you kind of put the ball back in your stance and you just kind of chop it out and just get it onto the green. So that way you can just two-putt it for your bogey and just move on to the next hole, right? So that's what I would recommend doing if you're in that situation. So John G says, does the straight line release apply for 50 to 70-yard pitch shots? Yes, absolutely. So the straight line release really applies to any shot, right? Any shot where you're essentially hinging the club up some amount. So you're having some lag on the club, and then you're releasing that lag, right? Now, as far as where the club is releasing, that can be different for a 50 to 70-yard pitch shot versus a driver, right? That can be very different depending on the kind of shot that you're trying to hit. So when you're hitting a 50 to 70-yard shot, you have options, right? You have the option of, driving it in low. You have the option of hitting a medium trajectory. You have the option of hitting something very high, right? You have options on that shot depending on what it gives you. So where the club releases can be different, right? But the actual, the release itself is still going to happen, right? So for a normal kind of trajectory kind of shot, you're going to typically see a release that's going to be, when we look at the best players, it's going to be around 40, 45 degrees out in front, right? And when we talk about release, for those of you who aren't familiar, what we're talking about is basically just getting rid of all the angles of the club, right? So here, I've got an angle between my lead arm and the shaft, right? And I'm going to let go of those angles. And when I let go of all the angles, that club is going to be splitting my arms like that. So you can see how my grip here is right in between my forearms. That's where the release is happening. Now, if you're trying to hit a high shot, right, that release may happen a little bit sooner. So that way you can have a little bit more loft to get the ball higher up in the air, right? So for a standard shot, my release may look like this, right? But if I'm trying to hit it higher, my release may look like that, where it's a little bit more out in front, or a little less out in front, excuse me. It's releasing a little bit earlier, right? If I'm trying to drive it in really low, my release may be later, right? Because I'm trying to have more shaft lean to drive that ball in low, and my release may actually be like 50 degrees out front if I'm trying to drive it in low. So yes, the release, you're releasing the club, right? But where that club is releasing may be different depending on the kind of shot that you're trying to hit. So John G says, hitting two balls together drill. The heel side always goes farther than the toe side of the putter. How do I balance this? So that means that you're leaving the face open is basically what that means. So, I would, have the let the putter kind of turn through. So it'd be hard to say what you need to do without seeing your swing. But the toe should actually be, the outside ball should actually be going a little bit farther. And the reason for that is that the toe of the club is going to be moving slightly faster. So with the toe of the club moving slightly faster, so let's say you came in dead square with the putter face, right? Dead square, and you're talking about hitting two balls. So you're hitting a ball right here and there, right? Well, this part of the face is going to be moving slightly slower than this part because this part is farther away from the hands, from the force, right? So the farther away it is, that's why your driver, you swing faster with your driver than you do with your 9-iron, because it's a much longer club. It's a longer lever, right? So this is a slightly longer lever hitting it here versus hitting it right here. So if you were to come in with a dead square face, if you were hitting both of those balls, the outside balls should be going just slightly farther because you're just hitting it with a hair more speed. Now, if you're coming in and the heel that ball is going farther, what that means is that your face is open because you're contacting this ball before you're hitting this ball, right? And when you contact the ball, when you first make contact with the ball, what's going to happen is it's like a collision, right? And that slows down the face. So what happens is that you hit that heel ball first because the face is open. It slows down the face slightly. Then you hit the outside ball, and that ball is not going to go as far because the face has slowed down from hitting the inside ball first, right? So what you need to do is you need to get that means that you're just leaving the putter face open, right? And you need to get the face more closed as you're coming in. So what is likely happening, without actually seeing, what's going on, but what's likely happening is you're likely pushing your hands out, right? So if we look here, you're more than likely kind of push. So one thing I often see is people kind of pushing the hands out. What I would try to feel like is that the putter swings around your body, right? It swings around your body. So that putter is going to go to the inside a little bit as you bring it back. And then it's going to swing out toward the balls. And then it's going to hit the balls. And then it's going to swing back in. What's likely happening is you're swinging this putter in, and then you're swinging it out, but you're continuing to push it out. And when you continue to push it out, that's going to tend to open up the face and make it go the right. If I had to guess, that's more than likely what's going on. So if you had the sensation of letting that putter kind of swing inside to out, then back to the inside, if you had that sensation of just letting that putter swing and letting that putter kind of square itself up, then you'll more than likely do better with that drill. But it's hard for me to know exactly what you need to do without seeing what's going on. Not sure if you guys can hear that, but we got some thunderstorms rolling in, it sounds like. I'm not sure if you guys can hear that thunder out there. All right, let's keep going. So Gordon A says, I'm hitting my 5-wood fat from the fairway, possible causes. So I went through the very first question of the day, you may have missed it, Gordon, but I went through all of that in the very first question. So I'm just going to give you kind of the cliff notes instead of kind of going through that whole spiel again. If you want to find the whole spiel, go back and watch the archived office hours after we're done here. But the first thing I would look at is your ball position. I put that ball position more toward the middle of your stance. And you mentioned that it's your 5-wood that you're hitting fat, right? Well, hit your 5-wood the exact same way that you hit your 8-iron. Don't, you more than likely, if I had to guess, this is a ball position issue, right? Because a lot of times what people do is with those fairway woods, they push the ball position forward. And when you push the ball position forward, it's very difficult to get the bottom of the swing to be in front of the ball. And that's what you have to do when you're hitting the ball off of the ground. The bottom of the swing arc has to be on the target side of the ball, right? Because that's going to allow you to hit down on the ball. You have to hit down on the ball. If you push the ball position forward, you're putting yourself in a position where you're going to hit up on it. And if you hit the ground when you're trying to hit up on it, the ground's in the way, you're going to hit it fat. So more than likely, your ball position is too far forward, and you need to move it more toward where you play your 8-iron and hit it that way. Now, if it's not that, what I'd look at is a hip sway. If you're swaying your hips, right, I would, we want to make sure that our hips kind of go back and around, and that we keep this angle in our right leg to make it easier to get to our lead side. That'd be the second thing I'd look at. The third thing I'd look at is your weight shift. So you want to make sure that you're shifting your weight into your lead side. Try to feel like 100% of your weight is on your lead foot at impact. And then the last thing I would look at is if you are swinging too much from the inside. If you swing too much, you shallow it too much, then you could be hitting behind the ball. So you may want to feel like you're coming over the top. But I would confirm that on video. I wouldn't just try swinging over the top without, because you may already be coming over the top, and then you don't want to try to come over the top even more if that's the case. So you want to confirm that you're coming over the top, or that you're swinging too much from the inside before you try to swing over the top. But if I had to put money on it, I would guess it's a ball position issue, because you said 5-wood only is what you're struggling with, and most of the time that's because people just push the ball position. They get a wood in their hands, and then they want to push the ball position too far forward. All right, let's keep going. So Jamie O says, any advice to help with gripping the club too tight beyond just don't grip it too tight, tummy, especially during a round, a struggle to stay focused on it. For what it's worth, I do the same thing with a pen or pencil. I definitely see more speed and follow through with a lighter grip. I don't think it has to do with the grips being too small. Everything works great when I actually keep the grip loose. So if that is the case, then what I'd recommend doing is I'd make it part of your routine before every shot to reinforce, hey, I want to have a nice, kind of loose, what feels like a loose grip. So really what you want to feel is you want to feel like you're holding the club tight enough that you can hold on to it and control it, right? But not so tight that you can't kind of move your wrist or anything like that. Because if you make a fist and you clench it as hard as you possibly can, it's hard to move your wrist, right? So we don't necessarily want to do that. So I would just make it part of your routine to kind of feel the club head, let the wrist kind of be loose, and maybe kind of if you're taking a rehearsal swing, to kind of feel the club head and feel the wrist kind of feel loose and carry that into the shot. But I would make it as part of your rehearsal. And so that way you don't lose focus on it, because it's easy to do, right? You're playing with your buddies or whatever, and then they're talking to you, and it's your turn to hit, and you can lose your routine a little bit. So what I try to do is really try to stay focused on your routine. Do it the same way every single time. Reinforce what you're trying to do. Oh, we just had a light flicker there. Reinforce what you're trying to do, and then go from there. Quick note: it looks like we have some thunderstorms working through here. It's possible I may lose power. I'm not sure if you just saw that, but my light flickered. So if I lose power, I'll try to get on as soon as I can. But if I lose power, then I can't do office hours. So anyway, if I suddenly go to black, that's why we got some thunderstorms rolling through here. All right, so Dale says yesterday Clay offered 3 drills he considers significant. One of them was to loosen your grip and allow the release to happen naturally. In the distance program, there are drills to fire the wrist, such as the grip ripper, which seems to contradict what he was teaching yesterday. Please clarify. Thank you, Q. So I'm not familiar with what he taught yesterday, but what the grip ripper is you're trying to pull the handle this way, right? So it's not necessarily about putting so much force into the handle. It's about trying to pull the club in this direction. So it's almost like you're ripping the grip off there. And that's what we need to do to have club head speed. To have speed, we need to put force into the handle, right? And that's going to be happening through contact, right? You may have heard this term, hold the club like a baby bird, or hold the club like a tube of toothpaste without squeezing out the toothpaste. Now, that can work at address, but once that club head starts moving, you have to put more pressure into it in order to allow it to move, right? And you're actually going to do this intuitively. You may not realize this, but you do this intuitively because if you didn't do it intuitively, the club would just fly out of your hands, right? So the idea is we have to put enough force into the handle to be able to hold on to it. And if you're swinging it with a lot of speed, you're going to have you're going to have to put a lot of force into the handle, right? And if we can feel like we're ripping off the grip, because basically when we're coming down here, we want to have this club in this kind of position here. The club head's moving that way, and if I can feel like I'm ripping this grip off, that's going to speed up the club, right? So again, I apologize. I'm not familiar with what Clay sent out yesterday as far as feeling the release or whatever. But for speed, we need to feel like we're ripping that grip off in order to speed up the club head through contact. But that's really just through impact, right? That's what we want to be feeling. As we're coming down here, we want to feel like we're ripping the grip off there. That's not something that you're going to feel like in your backswing, right? In your backswing, things are moving a lot slower. You don't need to have a crazy, grip ripping kind of feel. It's really just as the club's coming down here, we want to feel like we're ripping it off as we're coming through contact. So Mike B says, I hit my irons well off the ground. I hit ball first and trap the ball. I have trouble when putting the iron shot on the tee. Is it the same shot? I push my iron shots right off the tee or hook them. Yes, it's the same shot. It really is. So when you tee up the ball, what I would be trying to do when you tee up the ball, if you're not teeing, now obviously if you're teeing up for your driver, you want to tee it a little bit higher so that way you can hit up on it, right? But for an iron's not designed to really hit up on it. It's designed to hit down on it like you're hitting it off the ground. So when you're teeing it up like on a par 3 or something like that and you're hitting an iron, you only really want to tee it up to where it would basically be the most perfect lie. So if you were to walk up to a ball in the fairway and you were to see, okay, that ball couldn't be in a better lie, that's what you're trying to create with the tee, right? So my guess is you're probably changing your mindset or teeing the ball up too high or something like that when you're hitting the ball off the tee. So just tee it up to where it just elevates it just slightly to where it's would be like the ball was just sitting up perfectly in the fairway. That's all you're trying to create when you're hitting the ball off the tee for a par 3. All right, let's get going. So John G says, on video, I sway on my backswing and slide on my downswing. I even see my practicing the stable fluid spine drills. Any good exercises, stop, sway, and slide. So really, if you stop the sway in the backswing, that will more than likely get rid of the slide in the downswing. So I'm not sure if you were around for this earlier, John, but I talked about the chair drill. So this is really the best drill for the sway in the backswing. So set up with a chair. You want it to be about waist level here, about hip level, right? Because this is the contact point that you want. You want it to be around your belt line or a little bit below the belt line. So on the hip there. So that's why I think a chair is good. Now, this particular chair would not be good for this drill because it swivels and it has wheels, right? So I try to find a chair that would work better than this. But basically what you do is you place a chair you have it to where it's touching your side. So get in your setup here and then pull up the chair to where it's just touching you, right? And then you're going to move into that chair slightly to start your backswing. And then as you get up to the top, you're going to create a small amount of space between your hip and that chair, right? And it's going to be about a hand thickness of space, right? And you want to do that as you're getting up to the top. When I see a lot of people do this drill, what they do wrong is they try to create that space and they go like this, right? I don't want you to create that space right away. I want you to load into your trail side, and then about halfway back, that's when you're going to gradually create that space as you go up to the top. So that's going to look like this. I'm going to move into the chair slightly, and then as I'm getting here, I'm still barely touching the chair, and then I'm going to gradually create space, a little bit of space, and now you can see I'm in a great position, and more than likely, I won't slide in the downswing, because typically what sliding occurs from swaying. Right? If I sway this way, I got to slide that way. But if I'm here, right, then I can more easily move into my lead side. Well, let's say that you are, swaying in the downswing. You're bumping that hip out too much. There's a drill from the compression line course. It's very similar to chair drill, where you put an alignment stick. You basically put that alignment stick vertically right outside your ankle, right? So that's alignment stick. Actually, I'll use my swing plate here. So basically this alignment stick would go vertically in the ground, right outside your ankle. So it would go like this, right? And what I want to do is I want to get to my lead side without my hip moving into this too much, right? So I would maybe put it like an inch outside your ankle. Right, so right there. So now I want to get here without my hip touching that, right? So I still want to make sure I'm getting to my lead side. I just don't want to touch this. So those are two drills you can do. But I would imagine most of the time, in my experience, if you fix that slide or that sway in the backswing, it fixes the slide in the downswing. But let's say it's not, then I would work on that drill. All right, let's keep going here. If we got any more questions, we got about 30 minutes left. Again, as I mentioned, there's some thunderstorms rolling through, so it's possible I may lose power. It's already flickered a couple times, so apologize if we do. We'll have to cut it short if that's the case, but hopefully it will be fine. So John G says, when you rotate your hips, do you feel your hips raising and lowering relative to each other? Well, feel is relative. So what you feel and what I feel may be a little bit different, but literally what's happening, it will be a little bit. So when we turn in the backswing, your trail hip is going to end up being higher than your lead hip, right? So if I were to use an alignment stick here, you'll see if I do this, you can see how I'm going to move into my trail side, and then I'm going to rotate my hip back around. You can see how I'm lower here. Now, as I get into my downswing, I want to feel like I keep that lower, my lead hip lower, as I start my downswing, and then I'm going to push my hip back and around. And then as I come through, and as my hips open up, the left part of my hips is going to get higher than my right part of my hip, right? So, but whether you feel that or not is really relative to you. What I find most people really struggle with is that they get that left hip really high to start the downswing. So they get here, right? And then they go like that right away. That's what's referred to as early extension, right? So what we want to do is we want to get here. We want to flex that hip. We want to feel that left hip down. We want to feel like that left hip goes down and around. And as it goes around, the left part is gonna move higher than the right part. But we want to feel that go down and around. That's what we want to feel like with that left hip. That's what I think most players are going to benefit from feeling. But again, feel is relative, so I don't know exactly what you're going to feel.
Sorry, just checking on the weather here real quick. So yeah, keep the questions coming. So John G says, how much side bend should I have with a driver versus an iron? It's really going to be about the same. It's going to be about the same. Not really any difference there. All right, we got a couple questions that came in. So Dave I says, should my hips be open 45 degrees at impact or maybe even more? When we look at the better players, that's typically they're going to be somewhere 40 to 50 degrees, but not everyone's going to be flexible enough to do that. Me personally, my hips aren't even close to 45 degrees open. My hips just aren't flexible enough to be able to do that. So, striving for something that you're physically not capable of doing is, kind of a fool's errand. I learned that a long time ago. So, if you're someone who's not physically capable of getting the hips open that much, I wouldn't be trying to do that. Be focusing on, what your ball flight and contact issues are and doing the best you can with that. Now, if you can't get your hips open 45 degrees or somewhere in that area, 40 to 50 degrees, it typically is a little bit more difficult to get the club to release more out in front. So you may have a little bit of an earlier release than a tour player. But hey, that's, tour players are tour players for a reason. They're professionals for a reason. Um, and if you were striving to become a professional golfer or something like that, it would probably be something that you would want to work on. So maybe seeing a physical therapist about getting, getting more flexibility in your hips and things like that to get you to where you can do that would be, something you can do. But if you're just looking to improve, that's not what's stopping you from improving, right? There's more than likely many, many, many other areas that can help you to improve. So John G says, at what part of the swing does the majority of your weight transfer to your lead foot? Right at the start of the downswing, right? So it's starting to move into your lead side as you about halfway back in the backswing, right? So if we were to kind of go through, where'd my club go? There we go. Right? So I'm shifting into my trail side. At this point in my swing, I'm going to have about 75, 80% of my pressure in my trail foot. Now, as I move up to the top, I'm going to start moving some of that pressure into my lead foot. But there's still going to be a majority of my pressure in my trail foot. So right here, I might be 75, 80% trail foot. And then right here, I might be 65, 70% trail foot. Then at the top, I'm going to be about 50, 50. So right at the start of the downswing, that's when the pressure, the scale is going to get tipped more toward the lead side. It's usually right in that transition, right in the start of the downswing is when that happens. When you look at the better players. So John C says, can you describe posting up on your lead foot to release the club? Yeah, so basically when we get to this point here in the downswing, when we look at the better players, right, what you're going to see is this lead leg is going to be bowed out some and it's going to be flexed, right? So I'm here, I'm going to bow out and have my lead leg flexed. And then from here, this is when I'm going to start straightening out my leg to push my hips back and around. And this is when I would say kind of the posting up is starting. And this is also, this lead arm parallel position
this is when the release starts, right? So the release is starting when I'm starting to straighten out my lead leg. So I'm here at the top. I'm going to actually typically create more lag as I'm coming down. So that angle between my lead arm and my shaft is typically going to increase, or it's going to stay about the same, right? It's going to get smaller, or it's going to stay the same. That lead leg is going to bow out. And then from here, I've reached my maximum lag position. This club is actually going to start gradually releasing from here. And my lead leg is going to start gradually straightening out. I'm going to come into impact here. My lead leg is continuing to straighten out. I'm continuing to release that lag, right? I'm going to release that club. Now, even in the release, typically that lead leg is not fully straightened out yet until just after release. And then from there, I'm coming all the way. My lead leg is fully straightened out, and I'm coming all the way around in that full finish. My release has already happened out here, out in front, about 45 degrees or so, as I come around into the full finish.
So Reg N says, should you attempt to feel a square club face at impact, or just let the swing flow without that thought? Well, again, feel is relative. So what you need to feel, what I need to feel, what Tiger feels, what Clay feels, what your buddy feels, it's going to be all different things. So, it depends on what's actually happening. Golf is a game of adjusting your feel to get the desired result that you want, right? So if you're just letting the face go and you don't have any feeling of like trying to square it at impact, and it's not square, you're going to need to change your feel in some way, right? To get it to happen, right? What's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result, right? So if you just, if you don't do something different, the face is going to remain closed. Right now, if you're going through contact and you feel like you're just letting that face go, right, and it's squaring up every time, then great, that's awesome. You're basically automatically squaring up the face. There's no conscious thought that needs to go into it. But if you're not, then you're going to need to make some sort of adjustment to change what's happening. Now, you can also you can change the grip and have the same feel through contact. Right. So if I strengthen the grip and I make the exact same swing, well, that's going to get the club face more close. And when I say strengthen the grip, I don't mean putting more force into the club. What I mean is having your lead hand more on top, trail hand more under. That's going to strengthen the grip. And if I make the exact same swing, the face will be more closed. On the other side of that, if I'm coming through and I'm just letting the face go and it's too closed, I'm hooking everything, then weakening the grip, right? Having the trail hand, moving it more to the side of the club, and then the trail hand more on top of the club, that's going to weaken the grip, and that's going to open up the face. And if I make the same swing that I did just a second ago, the face will be more open. So it really just depends on, feel. Like I said, feel is relative. So I have no idea what you're feeling in your swing. So it's really just, you have to adjust your feel to get the desired result that you want. So Gary P says, if your body won't let you stop swaying a little, is there anything you can do to compensate to not lose power and consistency? Well, I mean, I guess I don't know what you mean by your body won't let you stop swaying. Your body will absolutely let you stop swaying. You just have to drill it. I've never worked with anyone who wasn't able to stop swaying. So I would just keep drilling the swaying thing to get it to be in a better place. What we have to understand is that we have to regress things to where we can do them. A lot of times people won't go slower, or they won't do it without a ball. They will only try a drill if it's at full speed with the ball, and then if it doesn't work, then it's a bad drill. That's not really the reality, right? If we're really not comfortable with something, and it's something that's very unnatural to us, you're going to have to train it. And in order to train something, you have to regress things to where you could do them. And what regression could be several things. It could be going slower. It could be doing it without a ball. It could be doing it in a pausing swing. It could be doing it, in a shorter swing, in some instances. But if you're working on something that's in your full swing, I would rather see somebody do it in a full swing, but just use other forms of regression, like going slower or something like that. But think about it this way: if I asked you if you could stop swaying in a 10-second swing, meaning a swing that looks like this. Right? So a super slow swing. You're probably sitting there and be like, well, yeah, I could do that. Well, then there's nothing physical that's not allowing your body to do it. It just means you need to go slower. You need to keep drilling it, and then you regress to progress. So get to where you can do it in a 10-second swing, get better at doing that, then get to where you can do it in an 8-second swing, then a 5-second swing. That's how you progress toward doing it. So that's what I'd recommend doing. You're going to lose power if you're on your trail foot. There isn't anything I'm going to be able to tell you that's just going to bring that power back that you're losing. So I would work on getting the pressure to move properly in your feet, and go as slow as you have to go to do it. I know you can do it, because I've never seen anyone not able to do it. So Anthony says, at what point in the swing do you do the grip ripper? That's through impact, right? So through impact, I would say basically when your hands get to that lowest point, so that's just before impact, and then you're pulling that grip up. So it's typically going to be that club parallel positions when your hands get to the lowest point. And then from there, the hands are going to move up, and you're going to rip that grip off. You're going to have the feeling that you're doing it anyway. So Jamie O says, I have an issue that has gotten better since starting to work on the shallowing fix, but it's still an issue. The issue is hitting random big hooks off a tee with 5-iron and 5 wood, and pretty much always the hybrids. They're still worthless off the tee for me. It doesn't happen with my driver or 3 wood or off the ground, and the shots are always really solid, just hooked hard. Then the face is just too closed. So you're just having instances where the face is too closed, so weakening the grip, or feeling like you're holding that face more open through contact. What I'd recommend doing is actually work on hitting fades where the face is too open, right? Try to hit some slices where the face is too open, and use a weaker grip, hold the face open, get some slices going, tone it down to a fade, then tone that down to a straighter shot. And if you practice hitting both shot shapes, you practice hitting draws and fades, you'll never get too far away from where a 0 is, right? But if you only hit draws, right, then you're going to have issues with hooks and blocks, right? So what I'd recommend doing is practice hitting different shot shapes and controlling the club face, so that way you will always have a better awareness of the club face. And that doesn't mean that you can't hit all draws out on the course. Just to go into that a little bit more, you can hit every single shot on the course as a draw if you want to. In your practice, I would practice hitting multiple shot shapes, so that way you never get too far away from where neutral is. Because if you only practice draws, then you're going to tend to have hooks and blocks, as you're going to tend to have that two-way miss. But if you practice hitting different shot shapes, then you're never going to get too far away from 0, and you can keep your draws are going to you're going to have much less of those hook and block misses. All right, let's keep going. So John G says, any putting thoughts with 4-foot putts to a hole with a raised lip or ring around it? I tend to miss a lot of these. Practice them. I mean, that's what I'd recommend doing, is just practice them. That's if you have something more specific with it. Typically, if you're missing 4-foot putts, a lot of times it's because you're either lifting up or kind of giving up on it or whatever. Stay in the putt, give it a confident stroke, and don't lift up to look at the hole. Try to stay fixated and not raise up out of it. That's typically what I see with people with those 4-foot, because the hole is right there and people putt it, and then as they're putting it, they're already kind of like going to pick it up, right? Just take the same kind of stroke that you would take from 20 feet, right? Obviously not the same length and speed, but the same, the same follow through and same thing, where you're not standing up out of it because you're not going to pick it up. So So yeah, that's what I would recommend doing, and practice them. Grab a ball and go to go to do a 4-foot putt, and then go to a different hole, do a different 4-foot putt, go to a different hole, do a different 4-foot putt. I know it's simple, but that will help you to get better at those 4-footers. So Gary P says, what would help hitting 3-woods from fairway higher? Speed would be the main thing. Here's the thing: if you're hitting the ball solidly, right? You're hitting the ball solidly. You're making ball first contact, and that 3-wood is not getting up in the air enough for you, then that 3-wood is not for you. You need to get a higher launch 3-wood, or you may not, or get more speed to accommodate the 3-wood that you're playing, right? So yeah, it's either getting more club head speed, and the way you get more club head speed is by working through our 20-minute distance fix. Work through it with your driver; it will trickle down to the rest of your clubs. You don't need to work through it specifically with your 3-wood. You certainly can if you want to, but you don't need to. But if you get more club head speed, it can accommodate that. But if you're hitting it solidly and the ball's just not getting up in the air enough, you got to get more club head speed. If you're hitting it solidly and you don't want to work on club head speed, right? Then you need to have a higher launch. You need to have a 3-wood that has more loft, or if you already have a high launch 3-wood, then the 3-wood probably isn't for you. You probably need a 4-wood or 5-wood or something like that. And then let's say, because one thing you could be doing is you could be hitting it thin. And if you're hitting it thin, I would move. I know this may seem counterintuitive. I would move the ball back in your stance so that way you can get the strike higher on the face. Because if you hit it thin, the ball is going to go low for a couple of reasons. One, 3-wood faces are domed. So what that means is that lower on the face is going to have less loft. So if you have a 15-degree 3-wood, it might be 12 degrees if you're hitting it low on the face, right? The other thing is that when you hit it low on the face will twist, right? The face will twist down, which will make it de-loft even more, right? So if you're hitting it thin, typically when you're hitting it thin, it means that you are the bottom of your swing is occurring at or before the ball, right? So you need to move the ball position back or more toward hit it the same way you would your 8-iron. So that way you can get the strike higher on the face. So that way the ball can go higher. So those would be, I would try to investigate what exactly the reason is why it's not going higher. So if you're hitting it solid, then it's either because you don't have enough speed or you don't have enough loft on the 3-wood, right? And if you're hitting it thin, then it's because the ball position is more than likely too forward or hanging back. Maybe you're trying to help the ball up in the air, and that's making you hit it thin. And I'd make sure that I would try to take a divot with your 3-wood so that we can get the strike higher on the face, which will make the ball go higher. So John G says, a little confused with pet the grass for lag and grip ripper for distance. Can I assume the pet the grass is in the transition and the grip ripper is a contact? No, they're both mainly happening at the same time. So what they're two different things that you're trying to address, right? So the pet the grass is trying to get more shaft lean at contact, right? That's what the pet the grass is addressing, right? So when we talk about pet the grass in the straight line release, we're talking about coming in and having our wrist in a bent back position, right? Feeling like we're petting the grass, and then we're releasing that out in front, right? Because what a lot of people do is they come in and they do that, right? They release it. They're coming in and they're here. So this isn't petting the grass where I'm throwing out the club early, right? This would be petting the grass, right? Where I'm coming in, my wrist is bent back, and then I'm releasing it out in front. That's going to allow me to get shaft lean on the ball at contact, release the club more out in front, and compress it more. Because when I have more shaft lean, I'm de-lofting it, right? The grip ripper is about club head speed. That's about creating club head speed. That's about putting more force into the handle and pulling this handle up as the club head goes down to create more speed. They're not addressing the same thing. So if you have to look at what you're trying to work on, right? If you're trying to work on getting more speed, then do the grip ripper. If you're trying to work on getting more shaft lean, then do the pet the grass drill. They're not the same drill
addressing the same thing, right? So hopefully that makes sense, but that's
the context of those drills. All right, got a few more minutes left if we have any more questions. So Gary P says for hybrids and fairway wood shots off the tee, where is ball and tee height? So for hybrids, what I'd recommend doing is hit it the exact same way that you would hit it off of the fairway. So if you had a perfect lie in the fairway, I would just tee up the ball as if you have a perfect lie. That's what I would do for any of your hybrids. For fairway woods, with you do the same thing, with the exception of the 3-wood. I would say with the 3-wood, you can tee it up. You can do it two ways. You can do it to where you play it in the exact same spot you would if you were hitting it out of the fairway, and just tee it up to where it's just perfectly like it would be like a perfect lie. But if you want to hit your 3-wood a little bit farther, and the reason why I say 3-wood is that, if you have your 5-wood and you want to hit your 5-wood a little bit farther, just hit your 3-wood, just hit a longer club. But with your 3-wood, if you're trying to hit your 3-wood a little bit farther, and this would even still be shorter than your driver, you can do it very, very similar to what you would do it with your driver. So with the driver, I don't have a fairway wood in here, but if you imagine with your driver, you're going to tee the ball up to generally to where about half of the ball, the equator of the ball is even with the crown of the club. So here's the crown of the club. The equator of the ball would be there. So, a 3-wood, a fairway wood isn't going to have as tall of a face, right? So the crown isn't going to be as high. So you're not going to tee it up as high, but you're going to do something very similar where you're going to tee up the ball to where the equator of the ball, the midpoint of the ball here would be even with the crown of the fairway wood. And then you would just place the ball slightly more forward in the stance. So if generally, when you're hitting a fairway wood off the ground, you might have that fairway wood, a little forward of the middle of the stance. This would kind of be like your fairway wood right off of the ground. I would maybe play it a ball or two forward of that and hit your 3-wood there. Because what that's going to do, teeing it up a little bit higher and putting the ball a little bit forward in your stance is going to promote more of an upward angle of attack. And if we have more of an upward angle of attack, we can get a higher launching shot with lower spin, and that's going to go farther. That's what we do with the driver, right? That's why we tee up the driver and why we want to hit up on the driver, so that way we can get a higher launching shot with low spin, right? So you can do something very similar with the fairway wood. Just tee it up a little bit higher, again, to where about the equator of the ball will be even with the top crown of the club there. That's going to give you just enough space underneath the ball to allow the club to work up into it. Now, we wouldn't want to tee it up really, really high like we would with as high as you do with the driver, because now you're opening up the possibility of just, cutting the tee out from underneath it, and the ball is just dropping right there, right? And we don't want to do that. So we want to take a very, very similar swing to what we were doing. It's just that with to what we would do out of the fairway, it's just that the only difference is here, we're going to try to miss the ground and we're going to let the club work up into the ball. Whereas if we're hitting the ball like we would out of the fairway, we're actually going to try to hit down on the ball a little bit and take a little bit of a divot. Now, you may not necessarily get a divot, and the reason for that is that a fairway wood is shaped, it's rounded on the bottom. It doesn't have as sharp of a leading edge, so you can hit the exact same attack angle where you're hitting down on the ball, 5 degrees, and with a wedge, your ground interaction can be very different versus a fairway wood. With a fairway wood, you may not get much of a divot at all. You may not even disturb the ground because of the shape of the club and no leading edge that doesn't allow it to dig. But with a wedge that has that sharp leading edge, that club, you hit 5 degrees down on it, depending on the turf, right? It may dig into the ground. So you're trying to hit down on the ground. You may watch on TV and see a tour player hit a 3-wood and have no divot, right? Well, that doesn't mean that they didn't hit down on it. It just means that, because that means that the turf was maybe firm, or, they came in fairly shallow, fairly flat, with the ground, but it was still down on it, but the interaction wasn't digging enough to be able to create that divot. If they made the exact same swing with a wedge, it would have created a divot, right? So long answer to a short question, but hybrids, I would hit the exact same way. You hit them out of the fairway, just tee them up exactly like they would out of the fairway. Basically, just give yourself a perfect lie on the tee box, and then with a 3-wood, you have the option of hitting it similarly to how you would with a driver. Tee it up a little bit higher, a little bit forward in the stance, hit up on it, higher launch, lower spin, longer distance, or you can hit it the same way you would out of the fairway. Just tee it up, give yourself a perfect lie, hit down and through it. It's not going to go quite as far, but it may be a little bit more consistent for you if you're used to kind of hitting that shot. All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining me. We'll go ahead and wrap it up right there. We'll be back Monday, 5 p.m. Eastern time. Everybody have a great weekend, and I'll talk to y'all next time.